Hey guys, welcome back to the Society Podcast. This week we're going to be talking about addiction, the root of addiction, and kind of the different aspects of how we can move away from addiction. Pastor Levi, I know you have some thoughts. Can you define what is addiction, especially for a Christian?
Yeah, and this, you hear this word and this can sound like a heavy topic. And just to start, I think a lot of times we hear certain words and we connect them with an experience that we've had. For example, sometimes people have had a bad experience in the church and they hear the word church and they identify whenever they hear that word with that experience. And so the same with addiction. A lot of times we think about a drug addiction or an addiction to alcohol. But I think honestly, addiction is so much more than just drugs and just alcohol. Addiction can be many things, and other words that can be used to describe addiction: dependency, habit, weakness, compulsion. And so at the end of the day, an addiction isn't just tied to some type of drug problem or some type of alcoholic problem, but even things in our life. Social media can become an addiction, and that addiction to have to post and to have to please. There can be addictions to pornography. There can be addictions to even sometimes things that we enjoy, addiction to money. So addiction, honestly, is a very broad thing, but sometimes we look at it as drugs or alcohol, but we have to be able to open up our understanding, because if we don't, we'll look at our life and go, okay, not addicted to drugs, not addicted to alcohol, so I'm doing all right. But we're addicted to social media, we're addicted to whatever it might be, pornography or lust, whatever it is. And so we have to be able to open up our understanding of what that word could mean and what that could look like in our life to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it definitely covers a broad amount of topics, and kind of something I want to cover, which I feel like a lot of people aren't addressing, especially in the church, is that we're not tackling, like you said, one addiction. We're not tackling drugs or alcohol or lust or anything like that, but we want to tackle the root cause of it. Yeah. We want to see how can we move away from this towards, like a more self-sustaining, like not dependent lifestyle. So what is the root of addiction? What causes us, to go there, to be led in that path? I know, you and I are not psychologists or anything like that.
Yeah.
But what, from our perspective, what is the root of that?
Yeah, simply sin. And sin manifests differently in all of our lives. It's crazy. When you look at other people, it's so easy sometimes. We see, and I just talked about this just last night, we see all the things wrong with them, all the things that agitate us, all the things that we don't agree with. We see all the brokenness in their life. It's so easy to see other people's sin and kind of be blind to our own. And that's why Jesus says, hey, listen, you're trying to point out that speck in your brother's eye, but you have a log, you have a plank in your own eye. And so we have to be careful that we don't look at other people and understand that sin is everywhere. Sin is within us. Sin is trying to become rampant and entice us. And there, we have this piece of us that's called flesh in the Bible. You read this word flesh, and it's our sin nature. And so at the end of the day, it manifests differently, but at the end of the day, it's sin itself. And a lot of times the sin that we're walking in or living in comes from past experience. Maybe you've experienced something, so it's kind of shaped and molded you to act a certain way. Maybe you think about parents who maybe neglect or mentally abuse or physically abuse a child, and so now that child comes to school and begins to lash out on other kids, mentally abuse and physically abuse. Experience has kind of shaped that sin in their life. Maybe it's truths that you have or the way that you see things. So sin is shaped by a lot of things, and it looks differently in all of our lives. But at the end of the day, the root of addiction is that. And so we have to be able to identify, okay, what kind of culture have I grown up in? What kind of experiences have I went through in my life as a child? And even, painful experiences, victorious experience. Sometimes victories can cause sin in our life because you have so much victory and you start to think that you're hot stuff, that you're all that in a bag of chips, and sometimes pride starts to stir up. And so honestly, to find that root of addiction, you have to identify and be able to see within yourself, okay, what experiences have I had? What kind of issues, what kind of things have I battled? And just being honest with yourself. And in order to find that root, what happens is we allow that root to grow. We allow that thing, because we're thinking about addiction as a drug problem, as an alcoholic problem, and we're ignoring these other addictions that we have, these hardcore dependencies that we have. And it's almost like, if I don't have this thing, I'm not okay. If I don't get this thing, I'm not going to be okay. And so we have to be able to assess, okay, if I was to lose this thing, not saying we have to, not saying that we should, but if I was to lose this thing, would I be okay? Would I still be standing? Would I still be able to live a life of purpose? Or would I be drained, and would I be depressed? So we really have to identify addiction in that way. And that is, the root of addiction is sin. And like I said, it manifests different for everybody, but yeah, being able to identify that.
Yeah, so if the root of addiction is sin, and that's a spiritual explanation, then I think probably an easy explanation from like a worldly perspective would be that like regarding what causes sin, you're unfulfilled.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, past experiences, past abuse, past things that kind of have left you feeling unworthy or not fulfilled in your life can lead you to seek things out like social media, validation, you know, in a relationship, just straight up addiction to drugs or alcohol, things that, you know, we've seen people experience and they're able to come out of it. So how can you come out of it? How can you move away from addiction? What can be a solution? And this is very, we're trying to simplify it here, even though it's a very complicated thing. But what is a simple solution? What is the way to move away and be more fulfilled?
Yeah, I think that's what you said is beautiful. You know, you're looking and you're longing for that satisfaction and fulfillment. And at the end of the day, no matter who you are, what you believe, what you're doing, you want some type of satisfaction, some type of fulfillment. And we try to find that in so many different ways. It's almost like there's this hole in our heart. We have these holes and we feel these voids in our lives. And so we're trying to attach to whatever we can grab. We're kind of just grabbing at straws, chasing after the carrot. And I think that's just beautifully put. So, but in terms of getting away from it, if we look at it from that angle of, hey, we're trying to find fulfillment and find satisfaction, then we have to find fulfillment and satisfaction somewhere. And so, for me, simply, I have to find my satisfaction and my fulfillment in my Creator, with the belief, hey, my God has created me. He has given me purpose. He knows the plans He has for me. All the things that He's done for me, how Jesus sacrificed His life so that I could receive this gift of salvation, and so many more things. I have to find fulfillment and satisfaction in that, because I'm going to have things in my life that I might enjoy, that I might have fun doing. When I get into a relationship, it feels good being in a relationship times. You have the butterflies, you have the happy moments, you go on the dates, you have the romance. It feels good. But if I am not satisfied first in my Creator and in my Father, then that relationship maybe can take that place of the Father in my heart, and I become so attached to that thing. At the end of the day, it's like, if I lose that relationship, or if I'm missing that thing, or if I'm not maybe getting affirmation from that person, then I don't feel valuable, and I don't feel worthy, and I don't feel beautiful, and I don't feel full of purpose and called. And so I have to have a place where I can have fulfillment and satisfaction that isn't going to change, right? And that's the thing. The world is constantly changing, and we're putting our lives into things that are constantly moving, constantly being altered. And so I have to find a place where I can have satisfaction, affirmation, fulfillment, purpose in something that isn't going to change, that's going to remain the same. And so that really helped me. I had, addictions in my life that really helped me step out of those addictions, understand, and you have to look back and get past shame and get past guilt and understand and forgive yourself. Allow God to forgive you. You forgive yourself, and move past that. But once I was able to move past that, just finding my fulfillment in a different place. And whether I had that thing or didn't have that thing, or was going through this thing or wasn't going through this thing, I was okay, because I was already fulfilled. I was already satisfied. And so I think that will really help people get out of that. And sometimes there are miraculous, instantaneous, like the desire is just like, it's gone. You wake up and you're like, whoa. And sometimes it's a process, right? You just have to work through those things. You have to fight and you have to battle. It's different for everybody. Like I said, sin manifests different in everybody's lives, and we can't expect the same thing for everybody. When we get into those cookie cutter situations, then people start to feel maybe shame. Well, that didn't happen like that for me. Maybe I'm not as important. I'm not as special. I don't matter. God doesn't love me. And so we have to be careful that we're not creating these cookie cutter instances for people, because it's different for everybody. But at the end of the day, as long as there is an honest, and we're returning to the source, finding our fulfillment there, if there's an honest pursuing of that, I really do believe that addiction cannot stand. So, yeah.
That's good. I think probably one of the key points that you made there, to say it in other words, is that you have to seek that out. You have to seek and make a conscious effort to get that satisfaction, to get that fulfillment from something good, something positive. We've seen many instances where people, replace their addiction with a better one. And they replace it with something that can be positive. Someone who is addicted to eating can replace it with exercise. So there is, a way to replace that satisfaction, but in a more spiritual sense, you have to seek God out. You have to make an effort to build that relationship and be fulfilled by something that you can't physically, tangibly have. And I think that's difficult for a lot of people, but I think that, if you come to church, if you make that effort, then it will happen. And like you said, addiction cannot stand.
For sure. And I think, you want to do things that will build you up, and that's a great example. Hey, I was addicted to eating, and find myself constantly going to the snack, going to the fridge, doing this, doing that. But then you've turned that around, and you've allowed yourself to begin to build up, and what's going to really set you up, you're starting to work out and starting to create this healthy lifestyle. And so it's important. It's all about there should be a turning, there should be a shift. And again, it's not like you lose everything in your life. You just can't handle no phones, no social media, you're not watching TV, you're not doing this. It's not about like becoming some living in the forest, like never seeing anybody, never encountering anything, but allowing your life to be built up so you can build others up, right? Because when we're built up, we can build others up. And so I think that was just a great point, doing stuff that will build you up. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been the Society Podcast on addiction. Thank you guys for tuning in. Next week, we're going to talk about evaluating yourself and kind of seeing how you need to grow and what steps you can take to become, a better Christian, a better person, just trying to grow constantly. Thanks.
Yep. See you guys.